Hey everyone, today we're going to be interviewing Zed, the leader of the Eldritch Nation. Enjoy. So tell me, how did 10 come into existence?
That's a long story, Primark, but I'm sure I've told several people about how it went. Essentially, before we were 10, the absolute majority of our organization were in the TUAF, which at that time was the TU military. We were not alone there. There were, for example, Vanguard, that is with BOO now. They were part of that as well as a branch. I'm not gonna go over the whole course of how TUAF operated, but let's just say that in the Terran Union, there was some differences between the military and the ministers running the organization as a whole. We did not see eye to eye very well, and there was some internal conflicts, eventually leading to us losing our patience and deciding that it would be a much better idea for us to operate on our own. We had already started to separate us before we left. We were already operating in the sense that me, Imperator, and the general military leadership were running the whole apparatus separate from the TU. This wasn't a very big step to take in terms of like organization, but rather in the biggest step was taking the risk of being notorious in the general community. But it turned out fine, as I've been running a lot of diplomacy on TU's behalf even before we left. So we decided in the end to split and do our own thing, where we did not have to answer to people that we did not agree with. It would make everything much easier, we thought, if the leadership of what we were thought alike. It makes it easier to come to decisions. You don't have as much internal conflict or struggle with settling on what you want to do as an organization. It became what it is, and I think that happened around June 2017, somewhere.
How would you describe your relations with Terran Union now? Are they bitter at all, or if not now, were they originally?
So, I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in knowing how they react. Well, I know that all people are aware of the fact that Soul Nebula is an organization, pretty big. They consist of, or they were founded by 3 guys or more that used to be ministers in the TU. They split off around the same time. So it was pretty much major chaos within the TU at the time. They lost 2 very big chunks and important figures, you could say. So the people that stayed weren't very happy. Darius Sanguna, the leader at the time, of the whole thing, that oversaw the whole organization, he wasn't very happy. He decided to say fuck it and basically leave the community for a while, or separate himself and let other people take the steering wheel. It resulted in essentially 2 people taking over, which was Universal G, who was the original founder of the organization anyways, informed that they were Hammer Time Gaming before they combined. And you have Fleet Admiral Coke, I mean. I got along very well with him before we split. There was some things about the split that we didn't see eye to eye on, neither with us and Universal G or us and Coke. So they weren't very, very happy for some time, for at least a few weeks. I don't remember if it was a couple of months, but I would say that the relations were pretty bad right after the split. However, slowly but surely, we kind of grew back closer to each other from the fact that we have a lot of common interests and we agree on a lot of things.
So you and Terran Union grew back together. How about Sol Nebula? How do y'all see them currently, and did y'all ever grow back together, or is it still, kind of a rivalry going on there?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say we have any rivalry going on there. However, the thing is that when they split, which was roughly half a day before we split, I think, they decided on their organization page to have the first thing written, like the first post they made was to basically claim that everything that they did not like about TU was the fault of the military, us. They were saying that they were seeking refuge from drama, you could say, but totally ignoring the fact that they were responsible for stirring up a lot of the internal conflict just as well as we did. And I did not like that, especially considering that we were just splitting off ourselves, which means that someone is going to take up a lot of like community space talking about how bad we were without like decent merit or enough merit to basically put everything on us. So I went and told Shockeray, who was the founder and leader, immediately. I told him that this was not acceptable and this would mean that we would have a lot of conflict with them in the future if they were to keep this post. He did comply and remove it, which I am grateful for. However, there was an issue later with them allegedly unknowingly attempting to poach members from us after we split up. They were sending like recruitment invitations to people that belong to our organization, which of course we did not like, but they claimed to not know that this was the case. And I'm gonna leave it unsaid whether it was or didn't or weren't the case. But we still have like, I would say that we don't like each other by default. We're not gonna go well together at any point that we meet, really, because we function fundamentally different and our leadership thinks they're different, have different priorities. Even though we are not in a conflict with them right now, I don't think that we're gonna have like a bright future together with them. Preferably, we will not have to deal with each other, but who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, it's one thing I've noticed from our time in Dual Universe is that the military types and the bureaucratic types never really see eye to eye, and there seems to be a lot of friction, mostly due to their different stances on how they're going to play the game and just personal politics in general. What would you say inspired the name overall, like the name and the overall theme for the Eldritch Nation?
So, if I'm gonna, I don't know if I should cut it short or... But I'm going to explain basically the thought process. So we had the TUAF, the Terran Union Armed Forces. When we split off, it was evident that we needed a new name. There had already been a movement to basically create a backup organization previously, which me and Michael Arclight, as I think his full nickname is, we basically came up with the name Viridian Dawn first back then, which was not the same thing, of course, but we kind of established there that that was kind of like around the time that Michael had grown very accustomed to us. He wasn't actually, we didn't get along first, me, Imperator Palion, and Michael, when Michael was in the TU, like in the beginning, because he was appointed the Minister of Defense. But long story short, we started to get along after we spent some more time together. When this movement happened, I realized that Michael and I were pretty good at brainstorming, you could say. We had been talking like structure, potential structures, naming conventions, and all that. This, of course, carried over to the day or the preparation before our we took a leave. So it was essentially not just me and Michael, it was others too brainstorming about the name. But it was us that basically settled it down in the end. And since we were exclusively military in the beginning, we wanted something that sounded like it had power. And also, since we didn't really view ourselves as the good guys, you know. I mean, there's a lot of power fantasies and hero fantasies people tend to have, like, we're going to save the galaxy from these nasty organizations or whatnot. We want to be neutral or we want to be good. And even though I would consider us pretty neutral in the end, we were going more for the, we don't care what others think of us approach. And we rather have something that sounds a bit scary, a bit powerful, not too edgy, preferably, but you can't really, have it all always. It's not that easy to make sure that a name doesn't ring badly, like in some people's ears, or some people will think it's stupid. But we first came to the point where we decided that order is the keyword to use because of our structure. So Michael eventually came up with the word Eldritch because he thought it sounded like it had some history. It was hinting towards that we had history. It was a bit like dark and fitted us pretty well. We are really only like good towards ourselves and supposedly scary in the face of others, or towards others, or perceived by others, I should say. But we combined that. It became the Eldritch Order, which was the first name we actually went with right when we split. But as we split, we made a decision to bring a few of the ministers that we agreed with from the TU, which was one of the points that led to some conflict between us and TU for the following weeks. But it meant that we took upon us the task to create a civilian side of organization as well. And if we were going to be the Eldritch Order, it doesn't really work that well because the whole organization is no longer just military, and we are not looking to have like a junta type of rule anymore, but we were looking more towards a nation. So that's where it came. We changed the Eldritch Order to the Eldritch Nation, which we thought better represented the structure and like our ambitions with the organization at the time. And I think it still works today because we haven't really changed from wanting to become a militaristic focused nation.
Well, what would you say, you mentioned how you were originally all military and how you made the transition to a nation. As that nation, what would you say, like what goals do you see are the most important as an organization?
Well, I mean, to each their own, right? But I would suggest for any organization or any new organization that they should put a lot of emphasis on basically creating the core rulership. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of troubles if you want to please too many people. Also, you're gonna get a lot of trouble if you want to have too diverse of opinions in the rulership, in their leadership, I should rather say. For example, in the TU, they were trying to implement some kind of pseudo democratic system where there were 13 ministers at one time, where you had to basically listen to every fucking minister's opinion before you could reach a decision. And then you needed like some kind of majority vote as well. This is ridiculously ineffective. And the idea they had was that, well, it's bad if you just have one person or few people deciding everything. It's better if you have like all these different diverse perspectives that you can take into account to make like a more nuanced decision. That is like complete bollocks, I think, when it comes to effectively running an organization. I recommend having a strong leadership where either there's a few people that think the same or one person that is accepted by every subordinate to have the ultimate say. Because even though some people are gonna like, oh, we want, why aren't you asking like all the citizens, or why aren't you asking every this or that? We want to vote for something, we want to have a say. Like, just because you have a referendum doesn't mean that people will reach a good decision or a coherent decision with the other like overall view you have as a leader. And even a dictator can choose to give their people a referendum if they want to. Like nothing is preventing them from doing so. Then they have the better control over it, like getting to choose when's the right time to do it. That's my biggest tip, I think, when it comes to creating an organization. Solidify your leadership, or you're going to have struggle.
Yeah, it reminds me of a saying I always heard growing up, that a good democracy is better than a bad monarchy, but a good monarchy is better than a bad democracy. And from what I've observed, the online environment is very different from the real life environment, where in like games such as this, the good monarchy seems to exist more often than not than the good democracy. It seems like there's just too wildly different perspectives online to have large democratic referendums, and it's more efficient and just you get things done a lot better and easier, it seems, with the fewer people that you have in power. It's good to have like some councils and whatnot, from what I've noticed, to kind of make sure the people that are making the final says, are making the right decisions. But other than that, just pure democracies do not seem to function very efficiently, from what I've seen. I guess moving on to the next question, where do you actually see the Eldritch Nation being? Like, how do you expect it to be in the next 5 years? Do you expect it to still be around? Do you expect it to be flourishing? What do you imagine in your mind?
So 5 years from now, nobody can really say for their organization. I do think that we're going to be around for a few years after launch, at least. It depends on a few things. I think we're going to exist for at least as long as I want it to exist, purely because of the reason that, like, I'm one of the founders, right? And being in charge of a lot of the aspects and forming, and I am like representing the organization myself, like as the main representative always. This means that how it runs and how it lives would depend a lot on how it goes for me, or how much time I can put in, or what ambitions I have. And this might sound like very, I don't know, egoistic, or that I'm not taking my members into account. That's not how I view it, though. But I think that we can live on even if we were dropped to 10 men. Like, for example, we could just repurpose. But I do think that we as a nation will survive some time after launch. I do not have ambition to always be in charge, you could say. I'd like to give the reins occasionally to other people, or eventually maybe. That depends on how it goes for us. But I think we're going to survive based on having very realistic goals and being very down to earth with how we view internal structure and relations. Because I see a lot of organization wanting to do too much in too short of a time, or trying to reach too far or too wide, in the sense that they can't really contain it. I think by choosing goals that are achievable but still something to aspire towards. For example, our main goal is to find a home planet, a planet that we can have for ourselves. That's the one primary goal we have from at the start. And I think looking at it that way, we will be able to go through a lot of ups and downs. And considering that most of our citizens are very tolerant when it comes to language, in the sense that the people who have recruited, they don't get mad for nothing, you could say. I think we're going to have very little internal drama compared to a lot of organizations. That's going to help our stability as well. So in 5 years from now, I do think we can still exist as a nation and be pretty big at that point. but I'm looking to exist or survive and develop from year to year to begin with.
Yeah, I guess that's really all any group can hope to accomplish starting out, is just, make it day by day. And can we, set goals for this year and think about next year when next year comes. We interrupt your scheduled broadcast to bring you this video's sponsor, the Dark Star Imperium, the epitome of military might. Service guarantees citizenship. Currently, is there anyone the Eldritch Nation would be consider an enemy or has the potential to become one? And if so, would you want to keep that private or not?
Well, I mean, it is best to not disclose how we think or how we make up such things, right? For the most part. It's I'm confident enough to reveal a lot of things without expecting it to hurt us in any significant or way that matter. I would say that, as I mentioned before, take Soul Nebula, for example. As you said, bureaucratic versus militaristic. I don't see us having a conflict now, right? But it could very much happen in the future if we should cross paths for whatever reason. Maybe they desire a position like a territory that we desire, or they have an ally that is that screws with us, or they screw with an ally of us. There's many ways it can lead to us having a conflict, I see. I'm not gonna say that we consider them an enemy now, though.
How active does the Eldritch Nation plan on being in the PvP scene, and how do you imagine it will, with, you don't want to really disclose who your enemies are, but how active does the Eldritch Nation plan on being in the PvP scene?
Well, considering that we're supposed to be a militaristic nation, it would be a bad idea to stay content, peaceful, and, well, focus on the defensive. Then we serve very little purpose. The purpose of having a well-organized and sizable military is to have the ability to go onto the offensive when it's profitable. Of course, there's going to be some kind of militaristic organization trying to live on the defense or hiring out their services and so on. But I do see us being very much active in the PvP scene. I already have plenty of plans for training, for example, or even mock battles with other organizations, just to increase like our organization. And I don't know anything about what kind of like items there will be for the PvP scene in game. So I'm pretty confident saying that we will be very active, because I know that there's not much people can do to prepare themselves against it yet, because we don't have combat until Alpha 3 on the roadmap, which is where people will really see what they can and cannot do. And I think that we're going to be working very hard to figure out what kind of PvP aspects we can use to our advantage, and how aggressive we can be in the future to profit.
Understandable. How does the Eldritch Nation gain new members, and is it currently recruiting?
Well, frankly, we haven't been very hardcore when it comes to recruiting for some time. Partially since the NDA came in place, it's been kind of like they stopped doing the dev diaries, and most of the things are things they post on the Twitter, like occasionally, and it means that the game itself like lose some hype because you hide away things that could attract new players. However, I've been, for example, like recruiting via the forums. I'm not going to say exactly how I do that because I think that people's strategies are different. Occasionally, recruiting from the Dual Universe Discord, or waiting for people to find us ourselves. I want to stress one thing, that we don't have we're not in need of being super big, if I'm gonna put that correctly. I think the whole idea is that we're going to be very united and solid and effective for our size, like a very compact style. So I rather turn away 5 people who just writes, "Hi, I want to join" in their application, and recruit that one that actually wants to have a conversation with me through the message system, or join our Discord and talk with me first. I rather make sure that we get like the few people who are willing to actually like show that they're interested and put in some dedication, than recruiting, the brain dead masses, so to speak. So I am very confident about the absolute majority of our member base being loyal and capable, especially when it comes to the PvP. We're going to witness how that turns out later, though.
Yeah. I think that's all we have time for right now. We're about to be going on 30 minutes or so. I believe any further questions can be kept for a part 2 later down the line. Thanks for joining us, and
yeah, thanks for having me. I'm sure up for a follow-up if people would have additional questions they would send to you or whatever.
Yeah,
I have
guess,
time.
Yeah, so I guess anyone in the comments section, if you have any questions that you would like asked if we were to do a part 2, comment them down below. And I guess until then, all right, see ya.
Yeah, take care.